Hi, welcome to this session. We have with us Alok Kejriwal, who's the founder of Games to Win. This is his fourth startup, which is one of the largest casual gaming companies in the world. Alok, welcome to the summit. This is your second book, The Cave.
Yep, it is. Thank you so much, Kumar, and thanks for calling me again. It is my second book. My first book was Why I Stopped Wearing My Socks, and it was all about my first few ventures, and it's done pretty well. So yeah, this one is, of course, all about spirituality and my spiritual experiences as an internet entrepreneur, because they all started after I became an internet entrepreneur, and that's what
That,
the book
that
is.
in many ways is almost like a paradox because the conventional sort
Yeah.
of view we take of entrepreneurs and especially internet entrepreneurs in the gaming space is that young swashbuckling guys in t-shirts and jeans, and spiritualism is not a word you would associate in that same breath describing that entrepreneur, right?
Right.
And
So actually, sorry, carry on.
so, one would almost wonder that how did you get spiritual during the journey of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so it's not uncommon. In fact, it's really not unusual. I'll give you an example. One of the stories inside the book is of my visit to Neem Karoli Baba's ashram in Kaichi, which is a small place in Uttarakhand. And this is the same ashram that Steve Jobs visited when he was in India. Now, one can argue that, okay, Steve Jobs was, whatever, hippie and, dreamer and so on and so forth. But just few years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, Mark Zuckerberg visited the same ashram. And this was because Steve Jobs had insisted and told him that you better go there because things happen there. Now, if you have a Facebook CEO and a Apple CEO coming and dipping their toes from California to Kaichi in Uttarakhand, I think the concept of people are trying to, explore ideas that they can't fully grapple with have always relied on spirituality. And actually, it's obvious that entrepreneurs rely on spirituality even more because there's always disorder in our lives. And to find order, you need help. And spirituality is one great tool.
Very well put. When you say disorder, I mean, being an entrepreneur myself, I can completely relate to when to the word disorder because it's not just in the entrepreneurship journey, but on a day-to-day basis, right? I mean,
That's right.
being an entrepreneur by definition is asking for disorder. You're seeking it.
Correct.
And what were some of the key sort of takeaways or findings or those aha moments in terms of spiritualism, you know, which,
Sure.
which really thought, where you would say, oh my God, I found the truth, right?
So, Kumar, you, me, and our listeners and our audience are all experiential believers, right? If I tell you something, you won't believe it until you experience it. So, all my stories and my conviction has been built up because of one experience after the other, real life, which kind of gathered and strengthened my belief in this path, right? So, circa 2000, when my first dot com was about to crash and burn, I happened to do the Sudarshan Kriya by Art of Living. And one can't say that because I did the Kriya I survived, but it gave me a kind of poise, it gave me a sense of balance or maybe a inward, let's say, confidence that let me survive. And I'm 20 years later, I'm much stronger than I was. Similarly, there are many, many stories in which there were no solutions to problems I had, or there were things that happened to me which were unbelievable. There's a story in the book called Parking Frenzy, and it's all about my parking game, which became the number one game and the number one app in the US iTunes store from Games to Win, which has never happened actually in the history of India ever again. And if you read that story, it explains to the reader the bizarreness of the incidents that happened to make that the number one app, primarily being that the app did not deserve to be number one, or it had nothing in it that would make it number one. So of course I extrapolated to something very different, but the point is, whether it's order or disorder, when you don't know what's going on, I have found that if you look a little beyond uh, the proof seeking mind and say, okay, maybe there's a few kind of softer things that I can't understand, a lot of clarity emerges.
Hmm. That's very deep, right? And I'm sure, being an entrepreneur, you must have tried to sort of chart or plot these experiences, right? And
Yes.
come across some sort of a trend or a,
Correct.
causality, or if not a causality, at least a correlation, right?
Yes.
And what
Yes.
are what are one or two of those?
So that's a great point, right? And as we all know, patterns are what we all live by. And what can you spot when you spot patterns? So basically, there is at the end of my book, I talk about my learnings, and it's called Connecting All the Dots. And few principles are, basic, say, intuition. What is intuition? Now, no one can quantify or qualify intuition. But these are energies that if you tap into, and the first thing now, Kumar, is to say, look, I don't know. Now, entrepreneurs are experts at saying that in their own business, but they don't accept that in their real life. We always like to be in control of our life and say, so one great starting point is to say, I don't know. And I don't know what will happen or why it's happening, but I will learn from what's happening. So you learn, you get to ingest much more than you would otherwise reject. The most interesting thing I've seen is that, now this might sound a little over the top, but we just don't live in the small little kingdoms that we've created for ourselves, but we live in this gigantic planet, right? And it starts from people like Galileo saying, why don't we fall off, why does the earth move around? In the same spirit, I have realized that there are many forces in nature and the universe that I have no mind or intellect to understand, but they affect us. And one of them, as I call, is the benevolent nature of the universe. So the universe is always benevolent. It is all about giving us what we want. All we need to do is kind of respect it and be open-minded and receive it when those cues come. And it's so amazing because many people just deny those gifts to them when they're being showered upon them, because their overthinking mind says, no, it has to be scientific. But you know look at COVID, right? We're all stuck in an unscientific problem, and what will you do? So if you have that adaptive and the mind to say, like a child, okay, I will accept, many good things happen.
Um, Very interestingly, when you speak about the benevolence of the universe,
Yes.
one almost also sees that there is this huge role of luck, like you spoke about intuition, right? And
Yes.
several entrepreneurs and successful sort of professionals as well have now been talking about saying that, we've done certain things and certain things just happened. We don't know why it happened, right? And what do you, in your sort of pursuit of spiritualism, also, think about luck, and how do you sort of work towards it? Many times we say
Yeah.
that if you just keep working, you will get that luck, right?
Yeah. So it's actually an algorithm, right? Luck is nothing but a pattern that repeats itself in our lives. From the time we were in school to the time we're adults. If you've seen, there are many moments where things came our way and many moments things didn't come our way. As you rightly said, if you are constantly at it, so keep doing and keep pushing, you suddenly come into a point in that intersection of things coming your way. Let's take payment apps, for example, Kumar, just completely digressing from the topic, right? Whoever pursued this challenge of solving problems of payment in India, which was much earlier on, had a very hard wall to push against. But then you had, demonetization, which is a huge fill up. And then you had COVID, which is again a complete change chart buster. Now, if you had not started on tackling payments, then you would never be in a position to reap the benefits. But those who did, they were laughing all the way to the bank. So I think as long as you have a trend which is right, uh, more things will change because the universe keeps changing, right?
You wrote this book pretty much before the pandemic, right?
Yep,
And
that's right.
I'm sure you would have added some more chapters, or maybe altered the content a little had you been writing the core part of the book during the pandemic. So, what are some of those key learnings which you would say are slightly different given the experience of the pandemic?
It's funny you mentioned this, right? I mean, apart from the few things that I want people to do, which is travel to places and visit, spiritual, rich vibrations, pretty much the rest of the book remains intact because it's more to deal with us and our minds rather than activity.
Right.
And the book was written. So Kumar, this is a really interesting thing. The book was written for the non-believer. I didn't write the book for the spiritualist or the believer. I said, listen, I want some guy who's completely like PhD or rocket science, who's working in NASA to say this book somehow kind of tickles me versus, the regular Joe in the ashram who's anyway going to be happy about it. So it's a very generic book. I mean, it just talks about certain things. The best part is it's a first person narrative, right? So it's not about do this or do there's no gyan there. It's all about, hey, this happened to me, I think it happened because of these reasons, maybe you like it, and that's the way the book rolls.
Right. Right. So coming to this last 8-9 months, Alok, it's been an interesting time, and
Yes.
it has certainly made a lot of the non-believers, if not believers, somewhere down the path of spiritualism, looking within and sort of self-introspecting on what life is about. How have the last 8-9 months been for you?
That's a very good question, Kumar. I think the biggest challenge that we all have is what to do with our time. Now, The Economist, I read The Economist when I was 18, and that was a very, very profound sentence they had mentioned there, that one day mankind will be so rich and so well to do that they will have the biggest challenge will be what to do with his time, which has actually happened now. Uh, what do? You don't have travel, you don't have blah, blah, blah. Uh, if you're a meditator, if you're a spiritual seeker, if you've had practices which are yoga and meditation, it automatically tunes you to kind of be a little slower or to be not that rushed or not that frenzied as life has always expected us to be. So it helped because, luckily I've been on this path for many years. Uh, the other thing is even the company you keep, right? Parents, family, children, spouse, you could meet them for a few minutes or a couple of hours every day, but if they're in your face 24/7, were they supposed to be there in your face all the time? It's a challenge a lot of people, like you mentioned earlier, are facing. The reason is because it's all external, and the whole magic is to go internal. So all through our life so far, we were rushing outwardly, right? Rush here, go there, travel. Now the challenge and the opportunity is to rush within. So if you close your eyes and sit and say, okay, I'm not going to open my eyes for 20 minutes, and I'm going to just think of one thing, whatever it is. The experience that you have and the rush that you'll get could be 20x of, going to a bar crawl and, figuring out where the hell were you the next day. So these are real life experiences which we all can enjoy and indulge in, as long as we either have trained in them or seek training in them.
That's very profound, Alok. And thank you so much for sharing some of these insights with us. I'm sure all our viewers would love to get a copy of your book, and I'm sure many of them
Sure.
will.
And I
Um,
hold it up. I'll just hold up the book looks like this. So this is the cave.
yeah, nice. I have an alternative title. If you do a big reprint, hopefully it's a big bestseller, and it should be
Sure.
called The Sage because.
Ah, so sweet.
Yeah. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thanks, Kumar. See you. Good luck.